So I'm going to show you how to prepare the Bundt cake pans, which is what we use typically for our Defender Cafe, and then also possibly for our new student-run businesses. We like to use Bundt cakes. So this is a Bundt pan. If you're not familiar with this, these are the pans. They have a little design on the side, and they have holes in them. And in the classroom, we do have some that are a little heavier than others, and we typically always go for the heavy ones first. And we have enough to pretty much make about 6 to 8 Bundt pans at a time. So we always make these in two. So you're always going to be making at least two of these. And the reason why we really like these is because they cut and they portion well. And the prep time on them, as far as decoration, is a lot less. We don't typically make a lot of frosting and do a heavily frosted or piped cake. That's not my specialty. So we typically just like the little bit less expensive Bundt cakes. And they put a really nice big slice and they serve well for how we deliver and serve our lunches. So a Bundt cake is always So a Bundt cake is always going to utilize 3 cake recipes if we are doing cakes from scratch, or 3 boxes if we are using box cake mix. And whether or not we're doing from scratch or box is going to make a difference on the next slide when I talk about that. But how we prepare the pan is always going to be the same. So Bundt cakes, these pans will stick if they're not handled properly. So it's really important that you wash them before we use them. Every single thing that we do for other people's consumption, we always wash a pan that we got off of the out of the cabinet or off of the racks. You don't know who handled them last. You don't know if they cleaned it well. You don't know if something has happened to that pan. There may be dust or hair, or even when the last time we used that pan. So it's good practice to always wash and dry these pans really well. And then you're going to rub shortening or Crisco very well into the bottom of the pan. A lot of times I will either put a rubber glove on, or I'll take a little piece of wax or parchment paper that's very handy to use. And then I'll just get a little bit of shortening out of the container. Do not reach your bare hand, clean or not, into the can of shortening because of cross contamination. Get a little bit of the shortening and rub it around the pan really well. Do not use like vegetable oil. That is not going to work. And then you want to put just a little bit of flour into the bottom of the pan and kind of shake that flour around. And it's also really important to make sure that you knock the extra flour out of the pan, either over the sink or the trash can. You shouldn't put that much flour in there, but you just want a little light coating of flour on the Crisco. And this is going to prevent the cake from coming off. Sometimes when we do a chocolate cake, we'll use cocoa powder instead of flour. But if you have a little bitty, just fine white layer, then it's fine even on the chocolate cake. So you're always going to use the stand mixer. We have kitchen aids in the classroom. This is the paddle attachment. So this is really important if you are doing something from scratch. Most of those recipes, make sure you pay attention to the directions, because you don't want to over mix. You barely kind of want to mix. You might be using the creaming method, which is very common for making certain types of cakes, in which you will mix the fat and the sugar together and some liquid ingredients, and you'll mix those quite a bit, and then you'll add the dry ingredients and barely pull it together. If you're doing a box cake, that is referred to as the single stage or single step or dump method. And so for a box cake, you put the whole thing in there and all the ingredients in there, and you actually want to turn it on medium speed for about 2 minutes, because those box cake actually is designed to be whipped up. So don't mix more than one batch of cake at a time in the bowl. These regular 4.5 quart bowls are not big enough to blend two. We may have some other kitchen aids, which you could do 2 at a time. But for portioning, I just recommend, we have 6 of these. Just do 1 at a time in there. Also, make sure you scrape down the bowl at least like halfway through to make sure that there's no unmixed batter in the bottom or the sides. So when it comes to cracking the eggs, we always use a flat surface. This will make less shells in your egg. A lot of times I use a plate. So I'll just get a plate out of the cabinet and that's what I crack my eggs on. That way, if I smash an egg or use the wrong pressure, then it doesn't go on the counter and then I don't have to worry about bacteria on the counter. You should always, as part of your prep duty, be sanitizing every flat surface in your kitchen before you even started. But still, it's just better to not cross contaminate with eggs and flat surface. So even though my photo shows me doing it directly on the stove, use a side plate or a piece of parchment or something like that. So you want to crack it into a side bowl. You can crack all of the eggs for the recipe in the bowl. You can see I cracked 3 at a time in there. The reason we crack them in the side bowl is, and not directly into the bowl, is A, you're not going to lose shells. You can see visually, like, do I have shells in here? And also, if you end up with a bad egg, you can just throw the eggs away. Now, note in the top, I have 2 different things of eggs here. So in the bottom one, I'm only using a couple of eggs out of this carton, and in the top one, there's just a couple of eggs left. If I am using all of the eggs in the carton and the carton is getting thrown away, then you can put the shells back in the carton because the whole thing's getting thrown away. Otherwise, use a side keep that's another reason using a side plate or a side bowl or something is good. Don't put your cracked eggshells back in here and then put that into the refrigerator. It kills me to no end when I get a carton out of the refrigerator and a student has done that. That is cross contamination. These eggs could contain salmonella. This is a HACCP plan that we have in place for making sure that we are not cross contaminating or spreading pathogens. And so make sure every single time that you follow that rule. So blend it really well, follow those directions from scratch or box. Pull it up, make sure that you have scraped the sides and the bottom really well. When you take the bowl off the stand mixer, the paddle attachment is going to kind of drip and drain. So make sure that you kind of take that off and knock that out first and then put it into the sink or on a side plate if you're going to use it again. Or you could take a piece of parchment or paper towel and put it where the bowl is. So that way, if you get any drip, you don't end up spreading that around. Particularly the next time you just put the bowl back on and then you touch the bowl and now you have cake batter all over your hands and then there's raw batter everywhere. Again, this is a HACCP. This is a prevention of spreading a potentially hazardous food item that contains raw eggs around the classroom and making a lot more of a mess. So just be conscious and aware. So when you are pouring the cake into the pan, this is a single flavor cake that I was demonstrating here. This is what a marble cake is going to look like. So a marble cake is going to have 2 flavors and 2 colors. You're going to pour one whole batch. So do one whole batch in the bowl, pour it in a pan. One whole batch in the bowl, pour it in the pan. So now I have 1 full cake in each pan. And then now I'm going to mix up a third cake. And that third batch is going to be evenly divided over top of the 2 that I've already poured in there. If this is a single batch flavor, like all chocolate, all strawberry, then you don't have to do anything else. Just pour it over the top and it's ready to bake. If you're going to marble it, then you want to use the lighter colored on the bottom, and then you'll do the single color on the top. Usually in your prep plan, I tell you which one. So we do the strawberry lemonade a lot, and so we'll do 2 full lemon, and then the strawberry gets divided over top. The strawberry is a darker color, it's a stronger flavor, and so that's why we choose that. Vanilla on the bottom, half chocolate on the top, because the chocolate is stronger flavored or whatnot. And then you just want to take a butter knife and just barely run it all the way around the cake batter, and that will swirl it in. You're not actually going to see that in the top. So if you're mixing enough that you can actually really see it, then you're over mixing. If you over mix, then you just turn your cake. In the chocolate vanilla, your cake is gray. In the strawberry lemonade, you have an orange cake now. So you don't get that distinction. So you just barely take that knife through. You're not really going to see a lot of it. Don't worry about it. And then you go ahead and put that in the oven. So don't overmix it. So when it comes to baking, this is a picture of our old ovens. Our new ovens have the little oven at the top. Do not use the little oven at the top. That oven is actually designed to do some heating from the top, and you'll burn the top of your bundt cakes. So we are only ever going to use the big oven, the full oven on the bottom. You want to preheat it for at least 15 minutes. You need to make sure that it is really hot in there, that the sides and everything has absorbed that heat. That should be part of your mise en place. Um, put your rack in the center or slightly to the top. I don't remember why. I really should have had on this picture my rack lowered just a tiny little bit. We only ever put two in at a time. Don't ever divide your rack out and put four in. That is too much. The heat isn't going to circulate properly. One of yours is too close to the bottom, and that can burn the bottom and create undesirables. So, two bundt cakes in an oven in the center. That's it. That's how we roll it. So bake it for about 35 to 40-ish minutes. The cake is done when it does not jiggle. The sides have slightly pulled apart from the pan. The cake is kind of puffed up. And when you very, very lightly spring it with gloves, or you could put like a little parchment paper or wax paper between you and the cake. So just take two fingers and just lightly press on it and then pull the parchment away. And if your finger indentions stay, then it needs another couple of minutes. And if it springs back slowly, then it's done and it's ready to come out. If it jumps back at you and it feels very firm, you have overcooked that. The toothpick is not the best way. If you put a toothpick in and it's clean, then that cake is overbaked. So if you are going to use the toothpick, you should put it in, pull it out, and it should still have moist crumb on that toothpick if you really want to check that. But those other factors really are a better mode for that. So take the pans out, put them on a cooling rack, and you cool them in their pans for about 20 minutes. And finally, I did not get a photo of this or a video. I will demonstrate this usually in class the first time that a group does this. So when you can touch the cake pans and they are just slightly warm, but they definitely can be handled with your hands, this is when we want to get it out of the pan. So take the cake in both hands and very, very lightly bounce the end. And you'll see the cake kind of jump up just a little bit. And when you see that, turn it a quarter turn, do it again, lightly bounce it, turn it a quarter turn, lightly bounce it, and then turn it a quarter turn. And so you actually have loosened the whole cake out of the bottom now very lightly. Like you're not trying to throw it in the air. You're just very lightly kind of just bouncing it along, tapping it, and you'll see that cake kind of jump. So once you've done that, have your sheet pan ready on the prep table, take your bundt cake and you flip it really, really hard and really well, and then kind of do it hard, and then that's going to get that out of the pan, and then gently lift that up, and you should see a perfect and complete pan or cake out of the pan. Shouldn't have any problems. Let that cool on the sheet pan until that is completely cooled, and then on the day of baking, on our prep day, usually we just cool it, and then we will set the bundt pan back on top of that, like really nice and well, and then that pan is actually going to act like a lid, and then we just store that on the sheet racks. And so they're on the sheet racks. The day of service, we will pull those, the bundt pan off. We'll clean those pans really well, make sure they're dry. Don't stack them wet because that can harbor bacteria. So just make sure they get good and dry. They're stored in the office walkthrough right off of the food lab. And then we generally create we generally create a glaze, and we will glaze those the day of service. You will always use gloves when you are handling that ready to eat food item. That is also a HACCP. Make sure that you wash your hands, put gloves on, that your gloves are clean, and you're not cross contaminating with gloves on. So once you're ready to do your boxes, each bundt cake is going to make 8 even slices. Our policies, our procedures are we always, always, always use the half method to cut and portion things. Do not try to just like cut your slices in a circle. You're going to end up with like this one's this big and that one's that big, and that is unacceptable. Everything needs to be consistent. So the way we do that is we take a cake and we cut it in half, and then we cut it in half again, and then we cut those in half, and that will give you 8 even slices. So always use pretty much all of our portioning. Same thing for our bars or any cakes or our pies. Almost everything uses the half method. For pies and for the square brownie pan, we have a little bit different method that uses a third method, and we do have some markers that we use for that. But for bundt pans, 8, 8, 8, and then we always use a small foam box. Gloves on our hands. I recommend 2 cake servers or spatulas, and usually I get a piece of cake with one really, really well underneath. I move that not very far over to the box that I already have prepared, and I use the second spatula to slide that cake very gently into the box so that it looks nice. And then we close those box lids, and then we label it as directed for the day. And now our bundt cakes are ready to do and serve for our guests.